For centuries, the eastern Mediterranean was the center of a thriving, interconnected world, a tapestry of empires that seemed destined to endure forever. Kings exchanged gold and lapis lazuli, merchants navigated complex maritime routes, and scribes recorded the triumphs of mighty rulers on clay tablets. Yet, in a historical heartbeat, this vibrant epic shattered. Around 1200 BCE, a widespread, multi-civilizational collapse swept across the known world, extinguishing the light of antiquity's greatest powers. Palaces burned, trade routes dissolved, and the voices of advanced societies fell silent. This is the unraveling of the Late Bronze Age, a mystery of systemic ruin that stands as one of the most profound catastrophes in human history. To comprehend the magnitude of this fall, one must first grasp the heights from which these societies tumbled. The Late Bronze Age was a marvel of early globalization, an era where distinct cultures were bound together by mutual reliance. The Mycenaean civilization dominated the Aegean with towering citadel fortresses and a highly regimented palace economy. To the east, the Hittite Empire controlled the vast, rugged expanse of Anatolia, possessing a military machine capable of rivaling the pharaohs of New Kingdom Egypt. Further inland, the Middle Assyrian Empire commanded the Mesopotamian heartland. At the core of this unprecedented prosperity lay a highly specialized economic network dependent on a single, vital alloy. Bronze, forged from copper and the far rarer tin, was the absolute lifeblood of warfare, agriculture, and royal prestige. Procuring these foundational materials required an intricate web of international trade, linking the tin mines of distant lands like modern Afghanistan to the smelters of the Levant and the Aegean. Evidence of this vast commercial network was spectacularly preserved in the Uluburun shipwreck, a merchant vessel that sank off the coast of southwestern Turkey in the late 14th century BCE. Its cargo hold contained raw glass, elephant ivory, ostrich eggshells, and 10 tons of copper ingots alongside 1 ton of tin, the exact 10-to-1 ratio required to forge weapon-grade bronze. This sunken time capsule illustrates a world where raw materials, luxury goods, and technological expertise flowed freely across borders, sustaining a cosmopolitan elite. This economic interdependence was mirrored by deeply sophisticated diplomatic relations. Rulers referred to one another as brothers in their correspondence, cementing political alliances through strategic diplomatic marriages and an extensive, highly ritualized exchange of lavish gifts. The Amarna letters, a vast archive of diplomatic correspondence discovered in the sands of Egypt, reveal a complex geopolitical landscape managed through a shared lingua franca of Akkadian cuneiform. Kings negotiated trade tariffs, resolved border disputes, and requested specialized physicians from rival courts. The staggering prosperity of port cities and inland capitals created an intoxicating illusion of permanent stability. Yet this very interconnectedness, the engine of their golden age, forged a deeply fragile system where the failure of one critical node in the supply chain threatened the survival of all. The illusion of permanence began to fracture as the 13th century BCE drew to a close. Modern archaeological and paleoclimatological records, derived from ancient pollen samples and stalagmite formations, reveal that the Bronze Age collapse was not the result of a single, isolated catastrophe. It was driven by a perfect storm of cascading systemic failures. A prolonged period of severe climate change initiated the crisis, shifting atmospheric patterns and bringing devastating multi-decadal droughts to the eastern Mediterranean. Crop yields plummeted across the region, leading to widespread famine, economic desperation, and the immediate contraction of agricultural surplus. As granaries emptied, the intricate trade networks that sustained the great empires began to fray, but nature's assault was not limited to the sky. A phenomenon known as an earthquake storm, a sequence of devastating seismic events clustering over a period of 50 years, rocked the tectonic fault lines of Greece and the Levant. Major administrative centers suffered catastrophic structural damage. Fortifications crumbled, and palace economies already strained to the breaking point by agricultural failure and disrupted trade faced insurmountable burdens of reconstruction. The physical infrastructure of civilization was literally cracking beneath their feet. The ruling elites, unable to feed their populations, protect their borders, or maintain the flow of prestige goods, quickly lost their mandate to rule. Internal revolts erupted across the Mycenaean world and the Levant. Desperate lower classes, starving and heavily taxed, turned against the centralized palace administrations that had hoarded wealth and power for generations. The archaeological record from this period shows destruction layers in major cities that suggest violence originating from within, as grand citadels were sacked and administrative centers were deliberately torched by the very people they were built to govern. Into this crucible of famine, seismic ruin, and civil strife sailed the ultimate catalyst for the era's demise. Ancient Egyptian inscriptions at Medinet Habu speak with dread of the Sea Peoples, a mysterious, loose confederation of seafaring raiders and displaced populations. They were not a single unified army striking from nowhere, but rather a tragic symptom of a world in motion. Driven from their own homelands in the Western Mediterranean or the Aegean by the same climatic shifts and societal breakdowns afflicting the great empires, they became a massive migratory force. Armed with bronze weaponry and a desperate hunger for survival, these maritime marauders swept across the Mediterranean basin. The destruction they wrought, combined with the ongoing systemic collapse, was absolute. The mighty Hittite Empire, which had stood for half a millennium and shaped the geopolitical destiny of the Near East, simply vanished from the historical record. Its capital, Hattusa, was abandoned by its elite and subsequently burned, leaving behind only colossal stone gates and archives of baked clay. The central authority of Anatolia dissolved into a fragmented landscape of minor Neo-Hittite states, erasing a superpower that had once dictated terms to pharaohs. On the Levantine coast, the wealthy merchants of Ugarit watched their doom approach from the sea. A desperate final letter recovered from the city's ruins paints a harrowing picture of its last days. The ruler of Ugarit pleaded for military assistance from the king of Alasaya, modern Cyprus, stating that enemy ships had already reached the shores, towns were burning, and the city's own troops and chariots were stationed far away in Hittite lands. The requested help never arrived. Shortly after this clay tablet was baked in the fires of the city's destruction, Ugarit, the glittering jewel of Mediterranean commerce, was wiped from the map forever. Egypt alone managed to withstand the onslaught, but the victory was Pyrrhic. Under the leadership of Ramses III, the Egyptian military engaged the Sea Peoples in a massive naval and land confrontation known as the Battle of the Delta. The pharaoh's archers rained death upon the invading ships, securing the borders of the new kingdom. However, the sheer cost of the war, combined with the total loss of international trade revenue and the ongoing regional droughts, mortally wounded the Egyptian state. It survived the 1200 BCE collapse, but it entered a slow, terminal decline, never to regain the imperial glory of its past. Across the Aegean, the Mycenaean citadel fortresses met a similarly devastating fate. Palaces at Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos were consumed by fire, their massive cyclopean walls offering no salvation against the compounding disasters of rebellion, invasion, and economic starvation. As the centralized administrative centers collapsed, the highly specialized knowledge they guarded evaporated into the smoke. Linear B, the complex syllabic script used by Mycenaean scribes to record palace inventories, agricultural yields, and administrative decrees, was utterly forgotten. The loss of literacy plunged the Greek world into a profound darkness, erasing centuries of cultural and administrative progress in a matter of decades. When the fires finally burned out, the geopolitical landscape of the ancient world was entirely unrecognizable. The highly structured, bureaucratic states of the late Bronze Age were replaced by fragmented, isolated communities struggling for mere survival. International trade ceased almost entirely. Monumental stone architecture was abandoned in favor of simple mud brick dwellings, and the population of the eastern Mediterranean drastically declined. This subsequent era, often termed the Greek Dark Ages, was characterized by dire poverty and cultural isolation, a stark and tragic contrast to the glittering cosmopolitanism of the preceding centuries. The collapse was so complete, the break in continuity so absolute, that the survivors retained only mythic, distorted memories of the towering citadels and godlike kings that had once ruled their world. These fragmented memories would eventually be woven into the epic poetry of Homer, transforming the historical reality of the Bronze Age into the legendary age of heroes. Yet, from the ashes of this multi-civilizational ruin, a new era was violently forced to emerge. The complete disruption of the international tin trade rendered the mass production of bronze nearly impossible, compelling the surviving societies to innovate out of sheer, desperate necessity. They turned their attention to a metal that was significantly more difficult to smelt, requiring much higher furnace temperatures, but which was vastly more abundant in the Earth's crust. The dawn of the Iron Age was not born of sudden technological genius or peaceful scientific advancement, but of a desperate adaptation to a permanently broken supply chain. Iron tools and weapons, once mastered, eventually democratized warfare and agriculture, laying the hidden, resilient groundwork for the classical civilizations that would rise to prominence centuries later. The Bronze Age collapse serves as a haunting mirror for any highly complex, globally integrated society. It reveals a terrifying historical truth about the nature of human progress. The very mechanisms that generated unprecedented wealth and cultural exchange, the intricate supply chains, the specialized economies, and the deep geopolitical interdependence, were precisely the vulnerabilities that ensured the system's total destruction. When multiple stressors struck simultaneously, the hyperconnected world lacked the foundational resilience to absorb the shock. Today, the silent ruins of Hattusa and the scorched stones of Mycenae stand as monumental testaments to the impermanence of human achievement. The end of these ancient civilizations was not merely a transition of political power, but a fundamental erasure of a globalized world order. The unraveling of the late Bronze Age remains an enduring mystery, not because the events are entirely unknown, but because the sheer scale of the catastrophe defies simple explanation. It offers profound, unsettling lessons about societal vulnerability, reminding us that no empire, no matter how economically integrated or militarily formidable, is immune to the cascading forces of nature and history.